for me personally, if you are investing in US, China, Hong Kong stocks, or even global stocks, I use Interactive Brokers. And the reason why I find that it's easy to track, I mean, it takes some learning to get used to the platform. But what I like is it's actually quite reasonable in terms of the pricing. So if you look at, so you can go to the pricing. So the pricing helps here to compare. So I will usually compare the commissions. So for US market, I think it's it's quite reasonable. If you see stocks, you just click stocks here. You can just spend a bit of time to go through, which I would suggest. You can see for the IBKR, there's the fixed and the tiered one. So I think both we use these two. You can see the trade per share is only about $1, 35 cents to $1. Depends on which tier you are in lah. Each each order, right, is just $1, and maximum is about 1% of your trade value, which is much cheaper because if you compare to local brokerages like DBS, OCBC, Poems, tends to be slight. They go by on a per cost basis. I think it's like $25. But if you reach, of course, if your transactions are huge, then it will go by as a percentage of the trade value. So if you have huge trades, then the local brokerage will help. But if it's going to be, if you're not, if you don't have a big portfolio to start off with, let's say less than $100,000, then IBKR will be a good platform to get started. IBKR is slightly more difficult to open an account, but what I like is it's more reputable. It's been around for a long, long time. I've I have vet through the financials. I mean, disclaimer, I also own the shares as well. So I do actually look through the annual reports to make sure that they are financially stable. So IBKR is one. I heard Saxo is pretty good, SAXO, so you can try that out. Let me just type in the chat. You can try Saxo. Okay, for Mumu and Tiger, right? Mumu and Tiger are relatively new. One thing which I like is it's very convenient. So they are focused on the user experience. So you realize that it's easy to use. For me, because they are the new kids on the block, I personally wouldn't put all my money inside. So I use Tiger for my kids, for my sons. I open up a Tiger broker account for them and I put in the money. So because it's not a lot of money, so it's also a way for me to test out the brokerage just to try it out. So I've actually tried out all the different brokerage over the years, from UOB Kay Hian to Poems to DBS to OCBC. I would say the local brokerages are the most. I would say if you want a peace of mind, right? That means sometimes, as I know, if you have very huge amount of money and you are afraid to put into one broker, like what happens to the broker? I I I can safely say that the local brokerages are probably the safest. So you're talking about the three local banks, or Philips Securities, Poems. For Singapore stocks, I would still put with the local brokerage. If you want a peace of mind, all right? Especially if you are very concerned, right, with putting, a big chunk of your money with a financial institution, right? Because we are not talking about 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. I know some of us might invest in $500,000 to $1 million or even more. So local brokerages will give you that peace of mind. If you're looking at US, of course, local brokerages are not very good with the fees are not competitive when it comes to overseas stocks. So overseas stocks, I will still create a separate account, maybe an IBKR account, just to invest in foreign shares because the pricing here I think are pretty good. I'm going to just share this with you guys so you guys can actually do a compare and comparison. You guys can use Saxo as well, so you can check out Saxo. I have not personally used Saxo, but I've heard from friends saying that Saxo is pretty good. So far, Tiger and Mumu, they have been marketing pretty aggressively. I've not seen the financials for Tiger. Mumu financials, not too bad, right? Not too bad. But of course, these two platforms, they're still quite new. So, I don't know. For a start, it could be just a simple, you can try it out, 10, 20,000, just to try whether you're familiar with it. But broker, at the end of the day, I would focus on two things. Number one is the fees. Number two is the reliability. That means the reputation. I don't mind paying a bit more, but the brokerage tend to be more reputable. And I'll tell you the reason why. Because if you're in this for the long game, right, you don't want to keep switching on brokerage account. Jumping from one to another can be very tiring, can be overwhelming. For me, I always like simplicity. Stick to one. Once you're familiar with it, you can just continue. Because brokerage, right, the thing about it, right, is when you switch over to a new platform, you have to start learning all over again. And brokers, they have been adding new and new features, new tools. So there's a lot to learn from one broker itself. Like for example, Interactive Brokers, right? You can see, right, they have a bunch of services. So it's not just the commissions here. They have a lot of things. So I don't have any fees with IBKR, but what is interesting is that they have this thing called let me see here. So you can actually create your you can actually help your family create joint accounts. That means if let's say if you and your wife you want to manage for you and your wife a joint family account, you can do that. You can even create a family account where you can manage your kids' money, your wife money, your parents' money, your sister's money, and you can put it all under one umbrella. So you can also do that as well. So there's a lot of things to explore for IBKR. And it takes time to learn and get used to it. So when I choose a broker, typically I'll just go it for the long term and I want to choose a more reputable one. So this is my take. Unfortunately, in Singapore, that IBKR is probably the only few US brokers in Singapore. But if you're based in the US, if you're a US citizen, there's actually a lot more brokerage accounts which are much better than IBKR. Charles Schwab, for instance, Fidelity, they are actually much bigger, more established brokers. For me, I think IBKR is actually good enough. If you buy SPY is the S&P 500 index from Moomoo. Does it mean as a custodian company, Moomoo won't bill us the 30% withholding tax? Not true. Custodian, so there's a custodian bank behind Moomoo. That means, right, when you buy the shares is parked with a custodian bank. It's not under Moomoo. Moomoo actually engage a separate bank. So it can be, for instance, Bank of New York Mellon, DBS Bank, if they have custodian services. You will still get the 30% withholding tax. The moment the dividends bypass Moomoo, you'll get the 30% withholding tax. So that's for dividends. Now, the thing about US stocks, right? Maybe for those who are new to investing and new to US stocks, there is actually a inheritance tax, which means that if let's say if you passed on, and if the US government finds out, you will get taxed. I think it's I can't remember, is it 30+% or something. So that's one issue with investing in US stocks. You get that tax. Number two is you can set up a trust, but a trust is expensive, it's complicated. So depends. If you have a banker or relationship manager who can help you and you don't mind the cost, if your AUM is huge, go ahead by all means. But if let's say if you're just a retail investor, you don't want to go through all those complexity, a trust is really quite difficult. Another way is, of course, to buy term insurance. So you sort of buy a term insurance to cover yourself and cover the total amount of portfolio value which you have. So that is another way to do it. Joe asked if we want to invest in Europe or UK stocks, would you recommend we use IBKR? So I would. You still use. For me personally, I would still use as well. It's much easier. Everything is one. It's under the sun, and the pricing is definitely much more competitive than our local brokerage account. Cheryl, good question. What happens to our investment if a brokerage account firm like Tiger or Moomoo go under? Typically, your shares should be parked safely with a custodian bank. So nothing will really happen, but it just can be just very tiring when you will go through that kind of mental stress when that kind of accounts happen. Because let's say if you have a huge portfolio, the brokerage, they might temporarily freeze your shares, cannot do anything because maybe they need to, maybe Moomoo or Tiger, let's say, for instance, they need to go through liquidation proceedings and all that. So they might temporarily say, okay, we have to freeze all the accounts for a while. You might not be able to trade. If you have to trade, you have to go through tedious paperwork. And especially at a time when, there'll be instances where you need to liquidate and sell your shares, but you cannot. That's the most distressful period. So you don't want to get into that situation. All right. So I hope that helps for brokerage account. I hope that's clearer for you guys. Which brokers I use And maybe this will help you. So you can actually check out IBKR, go under their pricing. You can see all their commissions here. They do have a lot of stocks. So US, EMEA is Middle East and South America, and then of course APAC. So let's say you look at US, Singapore shares. So Singapore is also pretty competitive. You can see here, if it's less than 2.5, so you look at the fixed right, 0.08% of the trade value. I think regardless of the value which are trading, for the local brokerages, I think if it's below a certain amount, I think below a certain amount is $25 per trade. So this one is as a percentage. And then the minimum you pay is about $2.50 for IBKR.